I got the message at 11:02 p.m., 2 nights before the trip I had been planning, saving for, and dreaming about for 3 long years. My phone buzzed on the counter. At first, I thought it was Jacob, my son, checking in about the luggage tags or maybe asking about sunscreen for the kids. Instead, there it was. A single, small message that rearranged the landscape of my heart in a blink. "You won't be joining us. Rachel prefers to keep it just her family." After I paid for the whole vacation, so I froze the travel fund before takeoff. You should understand your place. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 64 years old, and I've lived long enough to bury a husband, raise a son, and learn that love doesn't always repay itself the way you imagine. That night, standing barefoot on the cool linoleum of my kitchen, reading that text, I felt something inside me sink. Not the hot flash of anger you might expect, but something smaller and meaner. Shame. The quiet embarrassment of realizing that maybe I had misread my place in the very family I had poured myself into. For years I had been dreaming of that trip. Maui, white sand, the scent of plumeria in the air. I had carried the idea like a secret ember after Tom died. Something to give the children, a way to stitch joy into a world that had been ripped open. I imagined Rachel's smile, the grandchildren building castles, Jacob laughing the way he hadn't laughed in years. I imagined us as a family again. So I saved. I sold furniture I no longer used. I cut cable. I worked late nights tutoring English online with aching eyes and stiff fingers. I tucked every extra 10 into a mason jar on the counter, and slowly, painfully, I watched that jar turn into a fund, and that fund into the promise of a dream. $21,763.84. Every cent accounted for. Every cent paid by me. I thought, they understood. I thought they were grateful. I thought they wanted me there, with them, sharing the sunrise over the ocean, lighting the lavender candle I'd set aside to burn for Tom on the shore. But 2 nights before the flight, all those years of sacrifice were swept away in 3 sentences typed on a screen. You should understand your place. My place. As though my place was behind the curtain, writing the checks while they took the stage. I picked the phone up, then put it down. My thumb hovered over Jacob's number. What would I even say? Please let me come. Please don't erase me. The words curdled before I could dial. I set the phone face down and walked to the desk where Tom's picture sat, his smile frozen in a time when things still made sense. Can you believe this? I whispered, but the silence of the room was its own answer. I opened my laptop and stared at the bank portal, at the line that read Travel Fund, Active. My hand trembled as I hovered over the button that said Freeze Account. My whole life I had been the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who bent myself thin so others could be comfortable. But that night, something in me shifted. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even revenge, not yet. It was clarity. I clicked the button. A small notification blinked back. All linked cards disabled. Manual authorization required. It was not a shout. It was not fireworks. It was peppermint tea steeping in the kitchen while a woman in a cardigan made a decision she could never unmake. And for the first time in decades, I felt steady. The next morning, Jacob's first text arrived. "Mom, the cards are being declined at check-in. Can you see anything?" I let it sit. Half an hour later, another. "Mom, please, the kids are freaking out. Just unlock it, okay? We'll talk when we get back." Then a voicemail, his voice tight, embarrassed, threaded with panic. "Mom, this isn't funny. Please unlock it. We're already at the airport." But I didn't answer. I didn't type. I didn't beg to be included in the family I had built. I made tea. I opened a fresh document on my computer. And instead of writing Jacob back, I wrote a list. Names of women I knew who had also been erased, overlooked, dismissed. Carol, whose son hadn't visited her once since she got sick. Louise, who still brought her late husband's photo to Bible study. Beverly, who told me not long ago she had never had a picture taken on a beach. 6 names in total. 6 women who had given their lives away in service to others, only to be quietly set aside when their usefulness was done. And that was when the thought first came to me, not as vengeance, but as a question. What if the trip wasn't lost? What if it was simply redirected? By mid-morning, the texts had turned frantic. "Mom, they won't let us check in. Can you please just call the bank? Rachel is furious. The kids are crying. Please, just fix it." His words tumbled one after another, not out of love or apology, but out of desperation. He wanted the vacation, not me. He wanted the beaches, not my company. And in every word I could hear the real message. You were good for the money, Mum, but not for the memories. The irony made me almost laugh, though my chest ached with it. They had spent weeks aching photos in matching outfits, posting captions about family forever, planning excursions that I had paid for but was not welcome to join. They were proud to show the world what I had built for them, all while quietly cutting me out of the picture. And now, at the gate, when the foundation cracked, it was my name they called, not out of love, out of need. I didn't answer. Instead, I poured another cup of peppermint tea, the kind Tom had always favoured, and walked the rooms of my quiet little house. Each wall, each photograph, each drawer held reminders of the life I had built, the sacrifices, the long nights, the years of putting everyone else first. I paused at the safe in my closet, turned the dial, and pulled out the thick envelope where I kept the printouts, flight confirmations, villa reservations, car rental agreements, excursion bookings. My name was on every line, my credit card on every receipt. I flipped through them slowly, page by page, like a woman reading a contract aloud in court. Evelyn Harper, sole payer, sole owner, sole author. For a long time I stared at the stack, my pulse steady, not angry, not panicked, just deliberate. I had been erased, but here in my hands was proof of something simple and undeniable. This trip was mine. I had built it. I had earned it. And if it was mine, then I had every right to decide who shared it. So I turned back to the list on my computer. 6 names. 6 women who had never been asked to be the centre of the photograph. I picked up the phone and started dialing. Carol was the first. She sounded wary when she answered, her voice rough with fatigue. "Evelyn, is everything all right?" "Do you have a passport?" I asked her. A pause, then a laugh, dry and startled. "A passport? Why? How would you like to see Maui?" Silence stretched on the line. Then, softly, "Are you serious?" As serious as I've ever been. By the time I hung up, she was crying. Not tears of sadness, but the kind of weeping that comes when hope has been gone so long, you forgot it was allowed to return. I made 5 more calls. Louise gasped so loudly I thought she might faint. Beverly whispered, "I can't believe someone thought of me." Nora stammered that she didn't own a swimsuit, but then promised she'd find one. Frances said she had never been on an airplane before, and Lucille just kept saying, "Oh my goodness," until we both laughed. By noon, the plan had shifted. The villa was rebooked, this time in my name alone, for 6 women and 1 walnut-framed photograph of Tom that I would place at the head of the table. Meanwhile, Jacob's desperation spiraled. Another voicemail arrived, his voice sharp now, fraying at the edges. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Just unlock the account. We can sort this out later. You're ruining everything." Later, Rachel tried too, her tone clipped and icy. "Evelyn, the children are disappointed. This isn't the time for games. Just be reasonable." Games. That word made something steel-hard settle in my chest. Had they thought this was a game? That I existed to bankroll their fun and then politely vanish from the photos? That they could excise me from the memory but still cash the check? I didn't respond. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. I let the silence sit heavy in their peace. pockets while the airline agent shook her head, while the cards declined one after another, while the trip they thought was theirs evaporated in front of them. 2 days later, the refund notifications trickled into my inbox. Airline cancellations, car rental reversals, villa deposit restored. Each ping was a quiet confirmation. The trip had not been stolen from me. It had been reclaimed. And as I watched those numbers settle back into my account, I realized something profound. This wasn't about punishing Jacob or humiliating Rachel. It wasn't even about revenge, though the satisfaction was undeniable. It was about directing my love, my money, my sacrifices toward people who would treasure them, people who would see me. When the last refund cleared, I lit Tom's lavender candle on the counter. Its smoke curled gently toward the ceiling, carrying with it something that felt like release. I whispered to his photograph, "We're still going, love, just with a different family this time." And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I smiled. The airport was alive with its usual symphony. Rolling suitcases, gate announcements, laughter, and hurried footsteps. But this time, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was watching life from the edges. I was in it, standing there with my boarding pass in hand, surrounded not by people who tolerated me, but by women who looked at me as if I had just opened a door they'd been knocking on for decades. Carol clutched my arm as we walked toward the gate. "I still can't believe this is real," she whispered, eyes wide as a child's. Louise, her white hair tucked neatly beneath a floppy sun hat, was grinning so hard her cheeks flushed pink. Beverly kept holding her phone up, snapping blurry selfies, giggling at each one. Nora and Francis were already talking about snorkeling, though neither had ever swum in the open sea. Lucille walked a step behind, shaking her head, murmuring, 67 years, and I never thought I'd see Hawaii." It felt like I was carrying them all with me, not just their bodies and their suitcases, but their hopes, their unspoken hunger to be more than footnotes in other people's stories. And for once, I wasn't shrinking myself to make room for others. I was expanding. The flight was long, but laughter made it shorter. We told stories of marriages, of betrayals, of the quiet heartbreak of being invisible in our own families. We shared secrets we hadn't said aloud in years. Somewhere over the Pacific, Beverly squeezed my hand and said, "Evelyn, you've given me back a piece of myself." I looked out the window at the endless stretch of blue and thought, maybe I've given myself back a piece too. And then, Hawaii. When we stepped out of the terminal, the air was heavy with salt and flowers, warm, sweet, alive. The sky stretched endless and blue, the palm trees swaying like they had been waiting for us. As we drove to the villa, the women pressed their faces to the glass like schoolgirls, gasping at every glimpse of ocean, every red blossom, every glittering wave. The villa itself was perched above the shoreline, white walls glowing against the green hills. When I opened the door, 6 women walked in as if they were stepping into a dream they hadn't dared to allow themselves. Louise ran her hand across the marble counter. Francis stood in the living room and whispering, "It's bigger than my whole house." Carol walked out to the balcony and froze, tears in her eyes, staring at the endless Pacific rolling toward us. That night, we gathered around the table. 7 plates, 6 for us, 1 for Tom's photograph at the head, his frame polished and shining. The candlelight flickered, soft and golden, and the women lifted their glasses of pineapple juice high. "To Evelyn," Lucille said, her voice trembling, "for reminding us we're still alive." We clinked our glasses, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something more powerful than being included. I felt chosen, by myself, by these women, by life itself. The days unfolded like a miracle. We swam in turquoise waters, our laughter louder than the waves. Beverly bought a bright red swimsuit and paraded across the sand while strangers cheered. Louise and Nora tried paddleboarding and fell in together, sputtering, then laughing so hard they couldn't climb back up. Carol lay on the shore, face to the sun, whispering, "I never thought I'd see this." Frances bought a postcard for each of her grandchildren, scrawling, "Your grandma finally flew." At sunset, we lit Tom's lavender candle on the beach. The women stood around me in silence as I placed the flame on the sand and let the ocean breeze carry its scent. I whispered, "We made it, Tom. We really made it." For the first time since he passed, the grief didn't feel like an anchor. It felt like wings, and then came the moment of quiet triumph. On the third day, as I scrolled through my phone, I saw Jacob's posts, photos from their driveway, kids still in pajamas, Rachel's forced smile. No beaches, no villa, no trip. The comments below were full of questions. "Weren't you supposed to be in Maui? What happened?" His captions were vague, defensive, but I knew the truth. Their perfect performance had cracked. I didn't reply. I didn't gloat. Instead, I turned my phone off, slipped it into my bag, and joined the women in the surf. Let them wonder. Let them spin their story. My story was already written in golden light and salt water and laughter so deep it left me breathless. When the week ended, we flew home sunburned and giddy, our suitcases stuffed with seashells and sarongs, our phones bursting with photos. But more than that, we carried something weightless yet unshakable. Proof that life doesn't end when others stop seeing you. Proof that you can reclaim your story, even at 64, even after decades of being overlooked. As I unlocked my front door, setting Tom's photo back in its place on the desk, I felt no bitterness, just clarity. My family had shown me where I stood in their world, and I had finally chosen where I would stand in mine. Sometimes revenge isn't fire and fury. Sometimes it's quieter. Sometimes it's the sound of waves crashing against a shore you never thought you'd touch, laughter spilling from the lips of women who thought their joy was behind them. Sometimes revenge is simply living the life they tried to deny you. And in that silence, in that certainty, I knew this truth. I had not been erased. I had been reborn,